A synth without a service manual might just end up as a pile of parts. Sharing out-of-print documents as PDFs on the internet keeps vintage gear out of the landfill. So a generous tech with a high-res photo scanner is a savior to synth lovers worldwide. Thank you, anonymous strangers. There are more broken keys than expected with this latest rescue project, likely caused by drop impact while in transit. The screen has some pixelation on the edges and a few horizontal lines through the middle, but it's very readable. To keep it that way, a plush towel will protect the LCD while the synth is face down on the bench. According to the aforementioned PDF service notes, there are 19 screws on the bottom plate that need removal. Looks to me as if no one's ever opened this synth, since none of the screw heads are stripped and there are no missing screws. For me, this is a bonus to be the first one on the scene for a repair job, not contending with someone else's handiwork. After the screws are out, the bottom plate slides forward and lifts away to get to the belly of the beast. Ooh, that's a lot of dust. And it appears this was one of the rattly bits rolling around inside the synth. I suspect there's more debris to discover. Let's see what's what inside here. This is the printed circuit board connected to the key bed switches. Here's the power board and transformer for 120 volts North American outlets. And referencing the service manual, this appears to be the inverter board with connections to the backlit LCD screen. Here are the ROMs for the WSA1, a set of 4 chips A through D. Looks as though these chips also work in the rack mount WSA1R. Version 2 is the last known version for the WSA1 that I know about, and I've not found another way to learn what's installed unless you do a visual check. Here is the port for the YSES1 expansion board. The good news here is that it can be accessed through a small panel by removing just a few screws, so the entire bottom plate doesn't have to come off. This is the housing for the floppy drive. Luckily, the disks seem to load fine. These wires connect the processor to the key bed, which has aftertouch and some diagnostic functionality during a test mode according to the service manual. The underside of the keys are weighted, which counters the spring slightly to give the keys a very pleasant touch when playing. Looks as though at least the plastic on the underside of the keys are just fine. And the all-too-common 25 years of animal hair and dust bunnies throughout, which is to be expected since my assumption is that the synth has never been cracked open for any sort of maintenance or repair before today. Cosmetic and non-structural impact damage of some kind on the edge of the external key well, that's pretty minor. And some keys are misaligned, probably the broken ones, but I'll flip the key bed over to investigate with more detail. Overall, not too shabby for this 1995 synthesizer that has seen at least 3 owners and transported in the same thin-walled, poorly insulated Frankenbox. To remove the key bed, the floppy housing needs to be unset. Only 5 screws to release. It lifts easily, but it's still tethered by a grounding wire on the inside of the chassis. Once disconnected, the housing moves further out of the way, though still attached to the PC boards on the synth, which is okay for this scenario. Now for the key bed removal. Undoing 7 screws will free the key bed from the chassis, but there are also 4 in-place reusable twisty ties holding the key bed wiring locked down. There's also 1 disposable cable tie that's anchoring other internal cables to the key bed bracket. The key bed is pretty hefty, maybe 7 pounds or so, and something loosened up while repositioning the key bed. More plastic key fragments that were rattling around inside the synth. That makes 4 bits so far. Turning the key bed around, a broken B key comes right out, with no resistance. I can see some plastic missing from the leveraged trench where the key pivots on the backbone. I'll put this aside right now. Pressing the back of the key from the top side directly against the spring underneath and pushing the key body forward releases this perfectly fine C key from the backbone of the key bed so I can get to the broken C# black key. Releasing the black key also requires removal of the other adjacent white key. So with D out of the way, the C# black key can be removed pushing down and then forward like any other key. This C# is also missing pivot point plastic. This B key, an octave below the top, also has pivoting issues, and it appears to be broken key number 3. And the top C has a weakened response when pressing compared to the other nearby keys. Like the others I've found, its pivot point is weakened by missing plastic, but it also doesn't seem to interact with the spring underneath properly. It may just be that the spring isn't seated correctly against the plastic underneath the key. Fragments of another black key signal another key needing attention. Removing the perfectly functioning A key will allow the damaged A sharp to come out without a hassle. Looking closer, it becomes apparent why there are so many keys with sheared plastic pivot points. The backbone metal is bent out of true in two places. There's a bend behind B and C at the end range, and another wrinkle about an octave below. As I suspected earlier, an end impact drop damaged not only external cosmetics on the chassis housing, but also had enough force to bend the metal on the keybed backbone, shearing the plastic joint on the affected key bodies, causing malfunctions. No previous owner investigated the extent of the damage and just resold this instrument unaware of what happened internally. Kinetic energy has to be released somehow, and it can often be the internal components that suffer the consequences. I can reshape the backbone. The metal just needs some coaxing. A pair of flat pliers and a steady hand should make quick work of this issue. I'm just happy that there is seemingly no other mechanical or electronic damage. I hope my luck holds out on that front. The fragments of plastic sheared from the keys are pretty thin, so gluing might be futile. I wanted to see if there were any replacement keys available for the WSA1. I always check with Sam at Syntaur. Sam has some great videos on restoring classic synths on his channel, and that's how I found out about his shop. I've purchased parts, manuals, and even an expansion board for another synth at Syntaur. So yeah, I recommend popping over there to see the vast collection of parts available. And no, I'm not sponsored by anyone. I just believe in supporting friendly, hardworking small businesses with real customer support. I need 2 B keys, 2 black keys, and 1 top C key. I also found a key spring I think would be good to have on backup just in case, though it technically isn't for this synth. It should work okay if I need it. So 5 keys in all and a couple of springs to get the WSA1 back into action. By the time I added shipping, it came out to around $70, which is a fair price for my situation. Last I checked, Syntaur also bought old synthesizers, even if not functioning, but thankfully I don't have to inquire about that today. While parts make their way to me, I can wipe down what I can, investigate how the synthesizer works, make sure the floppy mechanism is debris-free before booting the disk I found in the drive, and I should clean up and blow out other stuff too, including the modulation and pitch bend wheels. There seems to be all kinds of bits that have been jumping around inside the WSA1 for a long time. That spring in the pitch bend wheel seems a little slack. Some compressed air to get between the PCBs and the tight spots layering the key bed should at the very least get rid of the rattling. And dust isn't really all that great for electronics anyhow. Plus, I don't care much for accumulated filth that I'm not personally responsible for in my own space. By the weekend, I should have parts by Syntaur and be underway replacing those keys. Then the real fun begins. I can explore the WSA1's sonic pads and acoustic modeling benefits to see what all the excitement is about. Until then, I guess I just clean with anticipation for the sounds to come.